let's take this from a marketer's perspective, where a marketer doesn't typically speak actuarial language, and
Yeah.
I want to set up my loyalty program, and I'm putting all this program, all these details together in order to help me understand how to get my customers to return. When they return and sign up for my loyalty program, and maybe they spend, or maybe they take actions that I want them to do, isn't that a good thing? Why would I think about the liability behind a loyalty program?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, right? And maybe we could dive into this liability first and sort of describe and give some context around what that is, right? So, Allison, I'm sure you belong to all kinds of loyalty programs. You probably redeemed points and miles for some free stuff at some point in time, and I'm sure all your listeners have as well. The question is, who's paying for all that free stuff, right? Somebody is at the end of the day, and it's the loyalty program, right? So you can think of the points that a loyalty program issues to their members is basically like an IOU, right? And so every point that they're issuing out is just one more IOU to add to the stack. And the accounting standards basically say, hey, you got to account for that, right? You're making this promise. And so you got to basically put a liability on your balance sheet for the sum of all of those IOUs, right? And what a lot of people don't realize is these liabilities are massive, right? For really big programs. So we can go down the list. Yeah, if we go down the list, American Airlines, they're like in the $8 billion range. Delta is in the $6.7 billion. United, $5 billion. Marriott's close to $5 billion. American Express is over $8 billion. So really meaningful numbers.
That's a lot.
And yeah, it's a lot of money. And these are exceptional programs, right? They're the world's largest loyalty programs, massive footprints. They're selling tons of points. So like these are definitely on the extreme end, but even for smaller programs, it's not uncommon to see liabilities in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, right? At the end of the day, these redemptions are expensive. It's a big expense, right? And so when you have this sort of meaningful financial item on your balance sheet, you kind of run into this financial reporting and compliance issue, right? Basically, you got to convince your auditors that the liability is accurate, right?
Okay.
And that can be very difficult to do without the right training to be able to really walk an auditor through the underlying assumptions and why they're correct and how they arrive, how those assumptions take you to the liability on the balance sheet.
And when you say that they're accurate, you mean that your predictions of the redemption are accurate?
Correct. Yeah. So in the case of American Airlines at $8 billion, the auditor is going to say, well, how did you get there? How do we know that that number is reasonable, right? And so you got to be able to produce the actuarial exhibits to back that up. Typically, the way that works is like, the auditor, whatever the big four it is, they'll grab one of their actuaries, in-house actuaries, and they'll start analyzing the liability and looking at it and saying, does this all jive? Doesn't make sense, right?
This just reminds me of like a butterfly flaps its wings in Mexico, and you have to predict a tornado off the coast of New York.
Right. Yeah. Fortunately, actuarial theory, it's helpful. It lends itself well to being able to solve this, and you can produce the exhibits to really make the argument and show that the liability is reasonable at the end of the day. So there is some framework here to work with. But yeah, that's that's one of the reasons why people should care about the liability, right? Is there are real financial reporting compliance constraints and challenges that you're going to need to solve for. I would say the bigger issue at play though is that at the end of the day, the person running the loyalty program has to make business decisions, right? And it's very difficult to make smart business decisions today if you don't know what those costs are, right? If you don't know how much the points that you're issuing today are going to eventually cost you, right? And if you get that wrong, you could be making awful business decisions today, right? That will eventually catch up to you, right? You could be unknowingly accumulating a financial burden that will eventually come due. And when that does, right, it could be pretty detrimental to the business. Could lead to things like program devaluations, which in turn leads to an awful customer experience, terrible PR, and frankly, just destroyed loyalty at the end of the day.